What's going on, everybody? Top 10 Pokemon back, bringing you our weekly top Pokemon card auctions of the week recap. Folks, I'll be doing a little bit of gloating on Modern this week. I felt that Modern had an amazing week, especially in the graded card market. So we'll be going over several Modern sales, of course some premium vintage sales. A lot to go over here, folks, as always, so stay tuned. I really appreciate you tuning in. A shout out to today's auction recap sponsor. They are back and better than ever. It is lowpopping.com. That's right, Low Popping has a newly designed website, and it is lowpopping.com, where they have a massive inventory of Pokemon cards already listed for sale. You can now buy these cards directly from the website, which is now conveniently designed to facilitate your search for grade A slabs. And the slabs they have available have never looked better. And you can filter that search by grade, language, grading company, price, and year. And yes, you can still trade, make offers, and sell to them through the Instagram Messenger or email. They also have buy now and pay later options also through Instagram and email. And they still ship worldwide and still accept multiple payment methods. So after this recap, you gotta go check out the newly designed lowpopping.com, which will of course be linked in the description below. And as always, please let me know what you get. All right, folks, with that being said, let's get into this auction recap. I got a lot of good stuff to go over with you, starting off with this BGS10 Black Label Japanese Classic TCG Mewtwo card that just came out, got a BGS10 Black Label, and sold for $790. And folks, let me just say, the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet 151 set that came out not that recently, I mean, it's been 3 to 4 months, but the graded cards from this set have been doing phenomenally well. Let's go over several examples. Here we have an Alakazam EX Special Illustration Rare that has sold for $112.50. We have the Zapdos EX Special Illustration Rare that has sold for $110. Here we have an Illustration Rare Squirtle that sold for $187.50, along with the Wartortle that sold for $185, and the Blastoise still sells for a hefty sum at $201.75. We also saw the Bulbasaur Illustration Rare that is sold for $126, the Ivysaur that sold for $164, and then the Venusaur EX that sold for $193. And then of course we saw this lineup of Charmander that sold for $112, Charmeleon that sold for $170, and the Charizard EX Special Illustration Rare that is still selling for around $465 as a PSA 10. So folks, I know that the 151 set has been the most popular set of the year. Yeah, I am very surprised to see these graded cards still doing so well, despite having a lot more copies out and for being out 3 to 4 months already. I mean, usually you see these prices a month after or maybe 2, but it's going on 4 months and this set is still doing strong. Let me know what you think about it. Here we have a few more interesting Modern sales. We have a special delivery Pikachu in PSA 10 that sold for $545. This card was very hyped up back in the day. What was it, 2020 when this came out? Of course, everything was hyped up back then. But I really feel this card has held its value over the years. And then here's another card that's held its value. It is the Reverse Holo Charizard from Evolutions in PSA 10 that sold this week for $350. And much like a majority of these cards from Evolutions, there are tons of these graded, and even in PSA 10. So the fact that it's still selling for $350 is really a testament to how popular that set was. And then we saw the regular Holo Charizard from Evolution sell for $1,450. And this is a particularly tough card to grade, even though it has like 500 and some PSA 10 examples. When you compare that to the overall amount that has been graded, it's actually quite difficult to get in a PSA 10. A couple more XY era cards. Here is a Giratina EX Full Art from Ancient Origins that sold for an even $300. And then we saw the Primal Kyogre EX from Ancient Origins that sold for $335. From XY Breakpoint, we saw this Full Art Darkrai EX that sold for $152. And then here we have this Best of XY Full Art Shauna, a Japanese card that sold for 2,866 big ones. And we're not quite done with Modern yet, folks. Here we have a BGS10 Black Label Poncho wearing Pikachu that sold for $13,099. Mama. And then folks, here's a card I don't know a whole lot about, but I still wanted to include it on the recap. It is a 2023 contestant winner masked royal card that got a PCG 10 gold grade, I guess, and sold for $3,600. And like I said, I don't know a whole lot about the history of this card or the value. I'm assuming this is a legitimate sale. I'm not sure, but I wanted to make mention of it. Up next are a couple of sealed modern boxes. We have this XY Flashfire box. Continues to do very well, selling for $2,750. We have this black and white Legendary Treasures box that sold for $3,450. Here is a Sun and Moon Cosmic Eclipse box. Really doing well this year. Most recently sold for $830. And then of course we have the Sun and Moon Team Up booster box that sold for $1,850. So yeah, a lot of very interesting sales with modern cards and product. Let's see what Vintage has been up to. Here we have a PSA 10 Shadowless Ninetales from base set that sold for $1,981. Here is a CGC 10 first edition base set Chansey that sold for $3,500. And then we have a first edition PSA 10 Polyrath Holo, also from base set, that sold for $5,600, while the PSA 10 Zapdos sold for $4,516. And then here is a card we have never seen on the auction recap. It is an Albino Border Error Pikachu card from base set, graded a PSA 7, sold for $810. And as you can see, the border is kind of like peach or beige colored. It's definitely different from the yellow border that we usually see, so a very interesting error card there, as the PSA 7 still goes for over $800. And then we can't forget the Japanese base set Charizard in PSA 10 that sold for $3,562. Here we have a couple of German first edition base set cards. Here is the first edition Venusaur, or the Bisaflor, that sold for $2,224 US. Here we have a first edition German Blastoise, or Turtok, in PSA 10 that sold for $6,598 US. And then we saw the first edition base set Glurak in PSA 10 that sold for $12,702 US. And then a couple of Charizard cards from the Top series. Here is a Topps Chrome Pokemon TV Charizard that sold for $810, and then we saw the Topps Chrome Sparkle Charizard that sold for $6,300. We saw one of the most valuable cards from Jungle Set. It is the first edition Snorlax in PSA 10 that sold for $7,025. From Expedition, we saw a BGS 9.5 4-position only Charizard card that sold for $7,982. And the reason it's so expensive is because, of course, it has that 4-position only text on it, and it is extremely limited. So yeah, hefty sum for that card. And then here we have a card that I've been seeing like every week, sometimes multiple times a week. It is the Espeon EX from Unseen Forces. I don't know why people aren't hanging on to this card, but it sold this week as a PSA 10 for $2,612. And we'll be seeing it later on in the video as well, folks. Here we have a couple of Skyridge blister packs. Here's one with Kabutops art that sold for $3,423. And then the Ho-Oh artwork sold for $4,250. And then onto the PWCC weekly auction block. Here is that Espeon EX yet again, sold for $2,760. We also saw this XY promo full art Venusaur EX. This sold as a PSA 10 for $1,200. Here is another Evolutions Charizard Holo in PSA 10 that sold for $1,260. Here we have a Black Label Pikachu Stamp Box promo card that sold for $1,350. And if you haven't seen it already, folks, go check out my most recent video where I reviewed the top 10 Pokemon cards with the most Black Label copies. I think this guy might have been on it. Very interesting video. Here we have a PSA 9 Gold Star Charizard from EX Dragon Frontiers, sold for $4,320. Along with this Gold Star Trico from EX Team Rocket Returns in PSA 10, this sold for $4,440. Then here we have a 1997 Bandai Starters card in PSA 10. This is about as a vintage artwork as you can get. Sold for $4,920. Here we have a 2003 Victory Orb promo card in PSA 10 that sold for $6,900. Here is a 2016 XY promo Pikachu Festa Holo that sold for $8,100. And then we saw 2 of the Japanese Sky Ridge Crystal Charizards in PSA 10. This one here sold for $9,900, while this one sold for $10,200. Here's a first edition base set Venusaur in PSA 10 that sold for $10,200. And then we saw 2 Evolution Gold Stars. Here's the Espeon Gold Star from the Pop Series 5, sold as a PSA 10 for $8,700, while the Umbreon Gold Star sold for $13,200. And the last Gold Star on our list today would have to be the Latios Gold Star from EX Deoxys that in PSA 10 sold for $13,200. And the auction of the week would have to go to this 2010 Tournament Prize Masters Key promo card in BGS 9.5 condition that sold for a staggering $48,000 this week. Community, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it more than you know. Don't forget to go check out lowpopping.com and see what they have there for you. That's all I got for you today, folks. Thanks again. I'll see you all in my next one.